Blanton, and I'm the director of the University of Pikeville ACE program, which is actually a trio program, and the formal name is Student Support Services. And I've been in this position as the director for 18 years. Now, year 19 will start on September 1.
That's automatically inspiring to students who may be 18 or 19 themselves, and you're doing the job their whole lives. So that's great. Okay. Well, I suspect as a kid growing up, you probably did not want to become a director of a federal trio program. So what is it that you wanted to do as a kid?
You know, I was one of those kids that I always knew I was going to college, but I had no clue what I was going to do. I had a lot of interest. I have a musical background. I always played in the band and sang in the choir, and I was a little bit artistic, so I kind of had the artsy, craftsy background. And so when it came time to make a choice about where I was going to go to college and what I was going to study, by that time I had developed an interest in interior design. And so my parents were wonderful, and one school I was interested in was in Atlanta. It was the Atlanta School of Interior Design. So we made a road trip to Atlanta, and we explored the school, and I was really excited until I got there and discovered that it was in a huge city. It was nothing like I imagined. It really wasn't a campus per se. It was a building in downtown Atlanta, and the dorms were far away. And so, being this little small town girl, I'm like, I'm not ready for that. So I ended up going to EKU, Eastern. And at Eastern, I chose my major of interior design. And I still love that type of thing to this day. So they stuck me in classes immediately, and I was very, very interested. I loved the classes. One of them was on color, use of color, and it was drawing. And ultimately, though, after my first semester at EKU, I became very homesick. And so I ended up coming back here to Pikeville and living at home with my parents and attending what was Pikeville College then. And so I didn't declare a major at that point. I just was sort of lost. This was my second semester, and I ended up staying here for 3 semesters and was sort of, undeclared major. And so then at that stage, I decided I had new things to explore, and so I moved to Lexington and got a job, and I worked. And I worked for a year and a half at a store in downtown Lexington. Again, my parents were very helpful and helped me get an apartment and that type of thing. And so after a year and a half, I was ready to go back to school. And during that time, I had developed a great interest in horticulture. I had started growing a whole lot of plants, and I just loved it. And so, of course, that's a wonderful major at UK. So I enrolled in UK. And declared the major of horticulture. And so they have a wonderful, wonderful program there with wonderful greenhouses, and so I really enjoyed that for a year. And then I happened to fall in love and get married. So once again, my school was put on hold, and so at that stage of the game, I got married, and we lived in Lexington, and my husband and I opened a plant store. In the 70s, they were very, very popular. They were all over everywhere. And so we developed that horticulture interest even further. And so ultimately we ended up returning to Pikeville because a local greenhouse operation was for sale. And we bought it, and we moved back to Pikeville and ran this local greenhouse operation. It had 7 greenhouses. It was a large operation. And we ran that until the 1977 flood destroyed the greenhouses. So at that stage of the game, I started having children. So I had 2 kids, and I was the kind, and at that time it was still okay to be the stay-at-home mom. So I stayed home until my oldest son was 8 and my youngest son was 4, and I decided, I really want more in my life. I want a career. And so this was when I decided I should go into education. So I returned to college. I had 2 years of college under my belt, about 63 hours, and so I had 2 more years to go. And so I enrolled in Pikeville College, and I was part-time at first, so it took, a few years, and then finally I went all in, went full-time, and got my degree as an high school English teacher. So that's what led me to where I am now. This long road of not knowing exactly what I wanted to do, but finally finding that education was where I needed to be.
So you've had quite a path of a lot of very diverse interests, right?
Varied interests.
But it
yes.
seems like once you're in, and you're really like you go all into what you're passionate about. So in your world, would there be a dream job for you?
Well, I think I'm probably in my dream job. This is more administration than actually teaching in a classroom, and I do love to teach, but once I moved into this type of work, I've found where I need to be.
And you walked us through a couple key moments in your life that kind of led you different places, but would you say there's one thing that really spurred you towards this path that you're on right now?
It's my purpose in life. It took me a long time to find it, but I did finally realize, and it's to help others, and it's to help others who maybe are, I don't know the proper word to use here, downtrodden or need more help than average Joe. People that have struggles that average Joe does not have. And I discovered that when I was teaching at the high school. I taught for a little while at the high school, and the kids that would come in and be so tired they would fall asleep in class just got my heart. And so that's when I knew that that's the path I needed to follow. And of course the program I'm in now, that's what we are. We help kids that are at risk.
So here you are growing up in a really supportive home, thoughtful parents, you're dedicated to what you do, but you were very honest and you said it wasn't until later that you discovered really what you were supposed to do.
Absolutely.
And so obviously not from not paying attention or not trying, but it just developed over a period of time.
It did.
So now, and you gave us a little window into this, in a sentence, if you were to say, Harriet is called to, how do you finish that sentence?
Serve others.
Serve others. Okay. And obviously then your job today perfectly aligns with what you feel called to do.
Absolutely.
So who was the most important or influential person on this path for you?
I have to say my grandmother. My grandmother was a helping soul. She was very involved in church and the lunch delivery programs and just taking in strays. I'm a take in stray kind of person. When my boys were in high school, their father and I took in many kids that were having difficulties with their parents, and so they would just move in with us. So, and that's the type of thing that my grandmother did. So my grandmother was my influence.
Mm. And did your grandmother ever, how much of your journey did your grandmother see? Did she see you get to this place in the TRIO program, or what?
She did.
Oh,
she did.
Great.
My grandmother lived to be 90, so.
Oh. And what would you say you did to help yourself be positioned for a job like you're doing right now?
I studied. I made good grades and was just very dedicated, to become, I'm a perfectionist, so I was determined to perfect my degree in education. So, background in education gives you lots of skill to work with people. So,
obviously, in this journey, you probably have had obstacles or challenges. How have you navigated those obstacles and challenges to live out your call?
Of course, we all have lots of obstacles in life and challenges, and I've had my share. I'm very fortunate that I have a very optimistic view of life, and I've always realized that life is going to be full of ups and downs, and it's how you navigate the downs that allow you to move forward in life. And I've always been one to be able to see the silver lining in the hard times. And just, you just got to persist. You just got to, I wake up every day and say I'm blessed. I'm blessed to wake up and see the sun shining. And I think a lot of times I feel like I have an easier time with that than a lot of people do, navigating the difficult times. And so I am blessed in that regard too, that I'm able to persist and move forward despite the difficulties. I always know that there is a light at the end of the tunnel.
So that's a really helpful life strategy, is positive, seeing things half full, a lot of potential. And in your world, you see a lot of students. I mean, the list would go on and on of all the students you've dealt with. So when a student comes in your office and they say, hey, can I shut the door? I have no idea what I'm going to do with my life. What am I supposed to do with my life? What advice would you have for them?
If they have no clue, then I always suggest that they take a class in something that they're a little bit interested in. And, you can't waste a lot of time, though, so you can't spend a lot of time, just taking class after class after class. So ultimately, my advice to students is choose the field that you're most interested in and get the degree in it, because you still have plenty of time to go a different direction later on, but you need to go ahead and persist and get your degree. And you still have many doors that are going to open. You can further your education in a master's degree if you choose that a different direction is where you needed to go. But I think choosing and persisting in a particular field until you get that bachelor's degree is always good advice for students.
One last question. When you were doing interior design and then you were doing horticulture, was there ever a moment when you thought, man, I'm just not going to figure out what I'm supposed to do?
Absolutely. When you major in different things like that, you're clearly feeling your way. And yes, that absolutely happened to me.
But then it clicked.
And here I am. I've been at this institution for 22 years, so I think that shows that this is the right place for me.